All right. So for today, we're just going to continue on the recruiting part. It's going to be the recruiting third session. And since recruiting's got a bunch of parts, I just want to start out by saying that if we think about the overall recruiting process, right, there is something called a job requisition. So what is a job requisition? This is the basically job and position details that are sent for approval and then posted online, internally or externally. So that is what a job rec is. So someone has to create that job rec, and the process for creating the job rec is defined in the BP job rec, as far as who will do what within that process. So it's typically going to be the manager or the recruiter. And so that's going to be part of the BP job rec. So once it is created and approved and then is posted, so posted online, it could mean it is posted internally and externally. So posted internally / externally. So this means that when a company is using Workday system, Workday gives them a web page where they could post their jobs, and there's multiple web pages, and those are called career sites. And internally, let me just spell that correctly. Oh, okay. Is it audible or am I not loud enough?
It is audible, but some disturbance is there.
Okay. I'll try to speak a little bit louder. So I was saying that the job has to be posted internally and externally on what is called career sites. Career sites. And career sites are basically websites that come with Workday recruiting, and they could be set up for internal employees only, and then there's sites that could be set up for external applicants as well as for agencies. So at a high level, job rec is created and is posted internally / externally on those career sites, and then obviously candidate has to apply. Okay, so once the candidate applies, what is the process for that, right? So the process for the candidate applying and where it goes after that, that's defined in the BP job application. So when the candidate applies, and then there is the back on the recruiter side, there is the recruiter hub. This is where recruiters, you can call it a dashboard that has all of their information. So recruiters dashboard with all of the recruiting data. And I showed you guys how to set this up last time, the recruiting data. So there's the recruiter hub, and then there is the review process, screen / review / assessment. And could also be offer/background check. And there's a couple other steps in there. So this is the recruitment steps. And if the candidate passes all these steps, then there is going to be, offer gets generated. So there is a template for that. And then the offer is sent to the candidate, and the candidate accepts or rejects, and then the recruiter takes action on moving the candidate to the higher phase. So here, recruiter moves candidate, recruiter or manager moves candidate to higher step. So in essence, basically this is the overall, the key things that happen within the recruiting module, right? And then there's a lot of the integrations that need to happen, or when we say background check, that data needs to be sent to the background vendor through the system if they have that set up. So overall, that's the process. And on my Excel sheet last time, I gave you guys screenshots on how to create the job requisition. I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to create it, but we will go through it in the system as well. So let me log into our server. Did anyone get a chance to work on the one small question that I posted on the assignment board, as far as who could move the who could post the jobs? Okay, so we'll go ahead and create a requisition. We go in as login. Can someone tell me the name of the requisition business process that we need that controls the requisition flow when create? Did you say create requisition?
Create job requisition.
Create job requisition.
That's correct. So if we see this, we see the initiation step, and then the creation step is for the HR partner, and then it goes to the recruiter for the compensation piece, and then there's the role assignment, and then there's the job posting, right? You have to post the job, and currently job posting is for the HR partner and the recruiter. And the question that I posted on the assignment was, what if the request is that going forward, we also want the HR administrator to be able to post the job? So what step do you have to modify, and how will you modify that? The question is, if we look at this business process, right, we see step E, which is post a job. And HR partner and the recruiter could do that currently. Now they want to change their process. Now they want to say
the HR admin, they should be able to do that, in addition to the HR partner and recruiter. So how would you modify this business process in order to do that? Just so that they have access to the template, I would put them in all of the review steps and all of the create steps, so that you have the flexibility of, because then you could control it at the step level on the other side. So best practice is to take that group and put them in all of these, in case you need to, you're not just doing it for the action or the review. So you have to make sure that group is here and under view all as well. And then we do the edit definition like you mentioned. And then whatever groups that are enabled, they would show up over here. So I'm not going to add that person because I don't want to mess up the tenant, but that's where you would add that. Let me go ahead and hit cancel. And now, so there's two things involved, right? From here, we make sure that the security policy, the business process policy, that group is there under action or approve or view, depending on where you need them to be. And then we come to business process policy and edit the actual row from here. To add the group to the business process. So this is a group for each of these steps. So in that case, we wanted to add one more group here that could post a job. So we edit the business process and add them here. Okay, so now let's go to a particular organization like Steve Morgan's. And let's see if there's any existing recs. If it's not in the business process policy, you will not be able to add it in the definition. So once we add it to the policy and then we activate the security policy, then they will show up on the Okay, next thing I wanted to show you guys was Steve Morgan's Global Modern Solutions. Okay, so I'm trying to create job requisition, right? And I'm here as the manager, but I cannot pull up any supervisory org. So I'm going to see who could initiate that. So initiator could be anybody, and like all of the HR partners, recruiter, and then the create position part is close to the HR partner. So we want to check is who are the who's in the HR partner role and who's in the recruiter role for Logan's organization. So we remember we come to the organization, the supervisory org, and then we come to roles. And I want to see who the recruiter is. So the recruiter is Logan. Human resources main. Try Teresa's. Somehow the access doesn't seem to be there for Logan to create the requisition. So I had actually created a requisition as James Moore, and I applied to it as an external candidate, and I put it in offer stage. But I want to do it from the beginning, and for some reason it's not allowing me to do that right now. This is 00714. It seems like it's not recognizing that I'm logged in as the recruiter or the HR business partner. So because when I look at the, if you look at my left-hand side at the bottom, here, I see that I'm logged in as James Moore, the HR person. But if I click here, has me as Charlie Smith, who is not the HR person. So I don't know why it's showing up twice, but I'm having some technical difficulty here. So we come to this one. So what I did was, instead of using our training server, I logged into the GMS on the community. So it should work from there, but then, I don't know what kind of setup they have there, but let's see how far we could get. So in this step, I'm going to log, the goal is to create a job requisition as a manager or as a recruiter. So the task name is just create job rec. So here, since I'm logged in as Logan, her organization is Human Resources. So I'm going to type that in. And then we'll just create a new. So I'm going to create a new one. So we just give it the number of openings, and then we'll enter the job information. The only problem with creating it on here is while we could create the requisition, but we cannot apply to it as an external candidate. Whereas on our own training server, we could create it and then we could also apply to it. But at least we'll make some progress on this one. And job description. In this section, questionnaire, if there was a question created, and then questions were tied to a questionnaire, we could select these to show up on the internal or the external site. So in this case, they seem to have more than one, and then you could just call them whatever you want. But in real life, companies will have one internal site, one external site, and they may have one agency, or they may have a separate one for contractors.
Right.
So whatever information that we enter here will show up on the job description when the job gets posted. So here is global monitoring. This information is whatever was the hiring manager's cost center. This was the hiring manager's cost center, so that's why it defaults here. And then we give it a compensation amount. So here's the bonus plan, stock plan, merit plan. So since we cannot proxy in as different folks in the GMS tenant in this one, I'm going to try to just log in as Joy Banks and go to her inbox. And here's the HR staffing coordinator position that we initiated, and now it came to her for approval. Okay. So now we're back to her to log in. So let me log back to her. So still logged in as Joy. So what I'm sharing on the screen is the job application template, and whatever's listed here, like these are the sections that show up on the external career site. So if we remove any fields or we want to add fields, we would need to edit this template. And we could also change, instead of putting like certification, we could call it skills or competencies. After we submitted it, right, now is the posted job step came, and this is where you could select external career site, and then also as internal site. So it takes the job posting description, and this information is coming from a template, like it's fun to work in a company, and I'll show you where to change that. And then remember I entered the sample job description in the job description field, so that's what shows up over here. And then by default, there's also a video that's been added to this. So the template for posting is under the Career Center. So let me go ahead and submit this. So in real life, you have the ability to create a career site where you could post the internal or external, job postings. And there will be 3 sections. There'll be the job listing page, job details page, and the application form. And the task name, as I've given you here, you could do create, edit, or delete career site. And then below is just the example that I had created before in our training server. So the way for the candidate to apply to that job. So now I'm gonna say edit career site, because that site that is gonna post it, right? For example, we have to make some verbiage changes to it. So we select that one. Okay. So you could select the name it's gonna have, the languages it could translate into, if it's published or not, like an active site, and then this will be the URL. I found previously from the community GMS, you cannot access the site unless you have a special username and password. And any of the terms or text that you need, based on certain criteria, there will be under these sections. So under job details is the About Us section. So all of this information is entered at the time of implementation, but if you need to change it, like you come over here to change it, like if you need to change this information. So it's within Workday, so the external site and the internal site, these are pages within the Workday system, but they're just designed to look like a web page where the jobs are posted. So there's no, in order to post to this external site, there is no integration. This is part of Workday. And when you create a brand new one, it will give you a brand new URL, and then it'll tell you like, okay, this is the URL to access that. And then obviously you could put your logo, the titles that you want, and the text You could change that, like the About Us text, which shows up for the company on the, we saw on the right-hand side, and then the social media links for the company. And if you want to have the candidate give you their social media, then you need to have an integration of what's called Seek ID. There's information about that on the community, what kind of questions you want them to answer, like how did you hear about us, and then the choices are listed here, right? If you need to modify these, you come to this page. In the US, there's also some fields which are required under personal information, so gender and race. So those questions are posted here. If you're a previous worker, and this would be a yes or no question. That says, have you previously worked at this organization? So you could change the text here. And then which fields you want the candidate to enter. And one of them has to be required. So if the person was a previous worker, you could ask them what was their previous work email. I should say, what was your previous work email? Or you could ask for their employee ID and manager. And then based on this information, Workday will merge their new profile that they're applying as with their previous employee record. And if you don't capture that information at this stage, then if this was a rehire or this person previously worked at this company before, and they don't identify this, and you're not able to match these IDs, once the person is hired, you cannot link their previous job information at that point. So you have to capture this information before they're hired, so Workday could merge the profiles if there are previous work. This would be like when you're first set up Workday recruiting, you would set up the career site at that time. And so when you first implement recruiting, you would set up the external site and internal site. But now I was just showing you that from like a maintenance point of view, if you need to come and change something, this is where you would come to change the career site info. But this is not, like normally you would not come over here. But if you need to make any changes, like to the About Us page, or if you need to change the logo, then you come over here. The external site that is actually part of the Workday recruiting. So the one that you generate within Workday using, like if this was a brand new, let me click OK on here. If you say create career center or create create external career site, this will be at the time of setup. When you create this and you fill out this information, and you fill out the About Us and all your social media and the logo and the questions, and you click OK, this website that's created is part of the Workday recruiting. So it does not require any integration or any other tool to post the jobs here. This will just create that page, and you will be given a URL. This is site URL, and you will post that URL on your website. So when people when external applicants, they go to like say workday.com, and they want to see their job listing, then you will publish this URL. So the jobs will be posted on this, even though it's called external career site, but it's really a page within Workday for the external candidates. So likewise, this is for external candidates. There's also one for internal candidates, and the internal candidates are the employees who currently work for the company. And they have a different web page. So they also have a like a job posting template, region, and if you want to allow them to set up job alerts, like if you want them to be notified if there's a job that matches their keyword shows up. So you would enable the job alerts from here. So both the internal career site and the external, they're both within the Workday recruiting system. I'm only showing you this for any changes, because typically you do change, like every couple of years there's a logo change, or you want to change the text that shows up at the bottom, or the terms and conditions. So those kind of things that do need to change. Okay, so we had created that requisition. So I want to apply it. I want to apply to it as an external candidate. But from the GMS tenant that's on the community, I cannot apply to it from an external point of view. So I'm trying to change the agenda, and hopefully by the time our next session, I could log into our own training center. So maybe what I'll do is next is this is the managers. So Logan is the manager and Carmen is the recruiter. Was anybody able to log into our internal server to see if it was working now? So what I'll go through today is what's called an offer template. So what is an offer template is offer template is going to have, it's an offer letter basically. So you know, like when you get accepted at a job, you have a letter that says, you know, dear candidate, you know, congrats, you know, we are delighted to give you an offer for the job title. You know, you've seen this, right? If you got on a job before, it's like the dear candidate offer letter. So in Workday, there's this functionality that's released that allows you to create a letter like that, and you create a template. So in that template, whenever you're ready to make an offer to someone, that template is already pre-populated with a candidate's name, and it gets pre-populated with their salary data or any of the data that you want on there. And then the recruiter could modify it, but at least it's pre-populated info. And as part of the offer business process, so the VP is called offer, and then it's going to say offer for, you know, whichever company that you work for. So instead of, you know, the name is just VP offer, and then you'll say like, you know, VP offer for Amazon or, you know, whichever organization that you have. And in the offer business process, there is a step called configure generate document. And that is part of, you know, assigned to the group of HR partner or recruiter. And at that point, they could use the existing template that's been created and modify it, and then they send it to the candidate to review. So we're going to create an offer letter, and we'll go through the steps. I have listed the steps here in this document, and but I will go through them on the community site. So this is how you create the offer letter template, and is part of the offer business process. Okay, so this is the business process. Here's the step. So I'm going to click on that, and I'll show you this. Oh yeah, you could also do a step label override. That means like the step is called generate document, but within the recruiting system to the recruiters, you don't want to call it generate document. You could just give it something that's more user-friendly. Maybe you just call it offer letter. I ended up adding my own initials to it. But you could, each of these steps, you could give it some user-friendly label using the label override when you put this in edit mode, and you could change the labels of these. So anyways, we click here to see the existing one. And we see that it's using the standard offer letter, and I could open that up in a new page. So the standard offer letter template, I see it has a introduction text block, it has a body, and it has an optional sign-on payment section, and it has a conclusion section. So the intro section is going to be like, you know, congratulations, you know, we're pleased to offer you the job. This will have the details. If there is a sign-on payment details, and then this would be basically the signature section. This is the existing one. So let's see what it has. So if I open up the first section and I put it in edit mode, so go to actions, text block, edit, and the source, you know, when this was created, offer was selected because this has to do with the offer letter. The category is also offer. You could select do not allow editing if you want this to be fixed and you do not want the recruiters to modify this. If you don't check it, then the recruiter could modify it based for each candidate. And basically you have any text that you could type in, you have formatting available, and you could insert first name, last name in any messages. And the way you do that is here, this tag. So you click on insert tag, and say for example, I want to insert the preferred name. So I want the pre-hire's preferred name, not the students. Pre-hires, workers, and their pre-hire's name. Okay, so I want this one. Okay. So this previously we only had first name, but I was told that we want the full preferred name, so I'm going to delete that. I inserted the preferred name, and then I want to make sure I put a comma and click OK. So now I have edited this text block. Likewise, we could edit the body of that template. Okay. So you could modify any text in here. This has business title, company, and then it's got the start date information. You could also type, to Okay, so this was just, we went through an existing one. If we were to create a brand new one, we'll do create document. Offer letter template. And category is going to be offers. And the type of the document is going to be called a template. And source has to be offer. So the visibility of this document is based on the category and the source. So the security by default for the offer is given to the pre-hire, the candidate, the recruiter, and the HR partner. So that's why it's critical that the correct category and the correct source be selected. And then to create the actual text block, we could do it from here and create text block, or you could type create text block from the top, and you could create it from here also. But I will create it from here so it stays within this document. And you can make this one, you can maximize it. So so here, I want to put the candidate's first name and last name. So I'll go to this tagging icon and select first name. And notice there's a lot of fields that are named first name, right? So we have to select the correct one that has to do with the recruiting. So this is the first name of the candidate, so this seems to be the correct one. And I also want the last name. See, the first one is the last name of the student. So since we're not using the student tracking system, if we selected this one, this field will show empty. See, I selected the correct field for first name, but I'm not selecting the correct last name field. And then when I generate the offer, the last name will not be populated. So that's why you have to check. Even when you're creating a report, just because the field is there, doesn't mean it's the right field. So the first one was the student, so I'm going to ignore that. So the last name was candidate, so this is the correct one. And here I want to put the job title. So it's going to be proposed job title. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Job title proposed. And etc., and so on. Likewise, we would need to create another block which would have the detail of the offer, like how much their salary is. Okay. Just looking at what I created before, I'm sure there's some offer template already created, and I could borrow that. Okay. Okay. So in this template, I have two text blocks, and I want to see what this one has. Okay. So it has the fields start date and the tag for the start date, which is target hire date proposed, location, and salary, and this text that I put at the bottom. So these are the tags. So we created this one. So there was already an existing one called standard offer letter, but we created our own. So how do we make that part of the process? So in order to do that, we remove the default document, and we have to pull the one that we created. So if I have saved it correctly, it would show up. Okay. So now, when the offer process runs, it will pick up the one that I just created. And run as user, see by default, it already puts in the name of the person who's logged in. So that means when this offer letter process runs, it will use the same security as that this person has, so that you don't run into the problem of, like, I created this offer template and I could see all those fields, but maybe the recruiter is not able to. So by default, Workday will run this process based on the name of the person who created the offer letter. So the person generating the template, in this case, will have the same security as Logan. So they will see exactly what Logan was able to see on the letter. That's why it says run as user. That's what that means. Okay. So that's how we create your own offer letter template, and then we insert that as the default document. So this is a huge deal, because when Workday recruiting came out in 2015 and 2016, companies were surprised to know that there was no way for them to create an offer letter within Workday recruiting. And at that time, other systems did have a Word or a PDF document that was generated. And this created a huge customer demand that they did need a way to create offer letters. And at that time in 2016 and from 2015 to 2017, the only way to create an offer letter and make it part of your recruiting process was to use Birch offer letter. And only in 2017, Workday introduced this configure generate document step. With this one, you could create any kind of offer letter template. So this was a huge deal. So since I'm on the community JMS, I'm not going to save it with my default document, so I'm going to cancel that out. But basically, when you need to change it, you go to your appropriate offer business process, you go to configure generate document, and then you can change it from there. In order to have this step, you need to make sure that this sub-process, this generate document sub-process, is part of your offer business process. Because by default, this is not there. So this has to be done at the time of implementation. So if I show you the default business process, this is not going to be there. So you will need to implement that. Let me open up a new tab. And we looked at the BP offer default. Okay. See, the default offer process, it does not have the document generation step. So those of you guys who are trained on the business process modification,
you make a copy of this one, and then you edit that one, you have to add that step. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. You have to add that step, and it's after the action steps. So, but it has to be before the offer decision. So I'll create a step called DDD, for example. And it's generate document. Okay. And whichever groups should have access to this. And you will have to click OK. So in order to have that documentation generation step, the functionality, you have to make sure this generate document is part of the offer process. I want to show you guys the domains, the security domains that are necessary for this. So all of these steps that I showed you within the system, they're on the offer generation tab. And it's all here. So if you want to replicate this on the training server, when it does work, you could do that. So all the screenshots are here.
Thank you.
And then I want to go over the security setup. So you want to make sure that the document library domain has the HR partner and the recruiter as part of the document library. And then for document generation results as well. So here's a screenshot from the community page, what that looks like. So you want to make sure that you edit this domain and add these groups at a minimum. They should be part of this domain. And then the link to the community that explains this is here. And then the steps to create a new one. Okay, so that is all about creating an offer template. Okay. I'll go ahead and do a brief introduction to the job application business process. Technically, this actually comes into play before the offer, because this is the process where when you first post the job and then the candidate applies to it, the first step that happens is the screening step or the review step. And so when the candidate applies to it, they go into the review. And when the recruiter sees it in the reviews, they could move it to the screening. And then after screening, they can move it to the interview. But the purpose of this diagram is to show that in this job application step, it's not linear.
you could do these steps in any order. You just have to make sure it's kind of some kind of logical order. You don't want to put the screening step after interview, obviously, because screening is actually something that logically needs to happen before a formal interview. But these are the, I believe, 8 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 steps of the job application process. So each of these is a separate business process. So there's 8 business processes, and all of them together make up what's called the dynamic business process definition. And when you look at that, and you pull up the job application, and you will see the tabs: review, screen, assessment, interview, reference check, offer, employment agreement, and background check. When you click on these tabs, this is not the business process. This will be the choices that are available to the recruiter or the hiring manager. So for offer, they can move them to the offer stage, they can move them to the background check, or they could hire them. So if someone's on the offer stage, they could generate another offer, they could submit them to background check, or they could hire them directly. And so on. If you're on different tabs, you'll see the different options there. So there's 8 different BPs, and these would be the different possible next steps. So let's see that in the community. So let me pull up the BP job application for global monitoring services. So we looked at the offer one. Now we're going to look at the job application one. Okay, so the first stage is the review stage, and then when someone's on the review stage, all the steps that are listed here, screen recruiter, screen manager, a recruiter called back. So they have a step label override, right? So this is what will show up in the application. So it's a little bit more user-friendly. So self-schedule screen, manager phone screen, recruiter call back, and then if there's an assessment. So these are the possible next steps when the candidate is on the review screen. And if you need to modify these or delete them, you could edit them from here. The order of these: review, screen, assessment, interview, offer. Remember, this is something that's set up at the tenant level when we did the edit tenant setup. If the company is using assessment, from the assessment stage, these are the possible different next steps. And if they're on the interview, these are the possible next steps. Now, there's a problem that if you're on the interview step and you allow your candidates to go to the offer, but your reference check is required. So what will happen, and this does happen a lot, is recruiter will move the person from interview directly into the offer, and they will forget about the background check. And this will happen a lot of times, and then they will come, and then whoever's maintaining the system, they will say, hey, this is not working for us. Our recruiters are skipping the background check, so we need to modify the process. Yeah. So in that scenario,
will remove the ability to move them to the offer step from any of these. And you could only move them to the offer step after the background check. Or you want to do that, wherever the logical, business requirement is, like they only want them to go to the offer step after reference check is complete. So that does, it does change a lot, because steps gets, there's a lot of flexibility, but when you give people a lot of flexibility, then there's no uniform process, and people either forget or they try to speed things up by skipping the steps. So these are the possible next steps. You can modify them by editing this. So edit dynamic definition. Remember, it's date track, so it would only be effective for workflows that happen after this date. And you could remove the possible next steps. I'm not going to remove them here because this is the community site. So like from the assessment, you don't want them to go directly to the offer or the employee agreement. So you could remove that. And I'm not going to hit OK. I'm just going to hit cancel. Okay. And at each step, if the candidate passes that step, that's great. But if the candidate fails that step, that is called disposition. So for each of these 8 steps, there are possible disposition codes that are listed here. So these could also be edited, and I believe the table name is maintain dispositions. Disposition is always a negative thing. Like these are all negative outcomes. So that's called a disposition. And I believe it's maintain dispositions. So remember, these are not conditions. So this is not the business process. The business process is here. These are the possible next steps. So when you move the candidate from the review to the screen stage, you can move them to the manager phone screen. So the manager will get the inbox item. Or you could move them to the recruiter callback. So these are the possible next steps on here. So this is actually, there's a lot of stuff in this process, but it can be modified if someone has the business process training under edit dynamic definition. Yeah, and then the order of these steps, that's remember we selected that when we did the edit tenant setup. Let me actually show you I was going to show you the maintain disposition list. So let me just go there. We'll maintain recruiting dispositions. So it's just a list of reasons and which ones are active. And for candidate withdrawal, there could only be one reason. That's why only one is selected. And also, disposition remaining jobs means if the candidate has applied for multiple jobs and he or she got hired for one of them, then this would be the reason used against his profile for all the other jobs that he applied. And if you hired somebody else, all the other candidates will get this reason, other candidate hired. So this is the remaining disposition for remaining candidates. So you select which one. What was the code? It was edit tenant recruiting. Edit tenant. She will not have access to all of them. Yeah, I know from past experience, she doesn't have access to all of them. So it'll have to be in our own tenant. Because if I try HCM, edit tenant, even that is not there for her.
Then recruiting.
Yeah, I don't think she has the access to all of those. So we could take a look at the next session, or it's in that former, I think the first session on recruiting video.